Good afternoon and welcome into the Craig Kennedy Show here on the SHC Athletics YouTube channel. Charlie Harrison alongside Craig Kennedy. Coach, before we get into this,
Yes.
and this is some important stuff.
This is important stuff.
How you doing today?
This is working. I think I'm doing really well.
You think you're doing really well and you've got the ASMR voice on because we've got some food to eat.
Boy, we have food to eat. Really good food here today.
It looks delicious. So these are empanadas from empanola.com. Empanola empanadas.
Yes.
And if you take a look, they're very nice. We have
See this?
sausage and gravy and eggs and bacon. Oh, man.
Oh my gosh. Aren't these good? There we go. Empanola. Raul Maliver, actually a tennis guy.
Okay.
Started this here on Old Shell Road. We took our team there one day. And these are just, they've sent, what do we got? What flavors do we have here today?
So I've got the eggs and bacon and the sausage and gravy. You have the same. And I will say this.
Yes.
I'm a gravy snob.
Okay.
That
I'm going to get into this gravy here.
may be one of the most flavorful sausage and gravies I've had from like a restaurant.
Wow.
Normally, it's kind of bland. You can tell that they're putting too much flour in it. This is not that. This is a work of art. I want to get a little bit of this chimichurri sauce for this eggs and bacon. And this is not so much like eggs and bacon inside as it's like a full omelet. You got
There's like a little omelet in there.
peppers and onions.
This is really, really good, and these are really good priced. I think they're $5.25 for these. They're super good. They also they'll cater, and they have package deals. And we got to try this now, Charlie, because
Yeah,
we
I'm
have the
looking forward
dessert.
to that one.
we have the dessert one here. I'm going to take a half of here, Charlie.
I'll say this too. Would you mind tossing me one in there?
I will.
And again, the eggs and bacon, it's perfectly seasoned. It's salty.
It's really good. And this, what do we have here? This is
I believe, the apple and pecan.
Is it pecan or pecan?
I think it depends on what part of the country you're in.
Pecan. That's still warm. Oh my gosh.
Now, Coach, you and I both grew up on farms. I have no doubt that you're familiar with the Mama's Big Breakfast before you got to
Yes,
go out to work for the day. What were your preferred breakfast items?
It was bacon and eggs. I was the youngest and the tallest in our family, and my brothers always said it's because I got more bacon than anybody else. and my bacon. Everybody likes bacon different ways. I like bacon kind of bendy.
Oh, so you're doing it wrong. I'm 100% a well done guy.
No.
If it almost looks a little bit too black to eat, I am good with it.
See, the problem is you cut it, and then bam, there's pieces of bacon flying everywhere.
But I don't want to cut it. I'm a straight hand to bacon.
Okay, see, in our family, tush pa, you had to use a fork, so I liked it. Bendy, my mom always had coffee on. We had a farm, and we had up to 30 head of horses at a time. It was a breeding farm with three stallions, and so we had clients in on a regular basis. And so Mom always had the coffee pot, and she always baked what she called dainties, which were little finger foods for everybody.
Okay.
So there was usually some of that went with breakfast as well.
Now, I'll say I was a pancakes guy. Like, I remember going over to my great-grandmother's house. We would go stay on the weekends, and we would get up, and she would make so many pancakes as we played throughout the day and ran through the field and everything. We'd be able to go in and just grab a pancake and go right back to it. So I was always a pancakes and bacon guy myself.
Yeah. Pancakes are good because you can keep them in your pocket as a kid, too.
You can.
As long as you don't put the syrup on them.
And that didn't stop me a couple of times. But, I was not the brightest kid. I'll say this, too. I will not eat, like, fast food egg.
Right.
Like, if you hand me that dehydrated egg,
absolutely not.
I will hand it back to you.
Yeah.
And I don't normally like when egg is baked into things
Right.
because it gets real dry.
Right.
Also not that.
Also not that. And Nolan, am I doing this right? These are really good. Really good.
Producer Nolan, do you want to bite one of these?
Sure, I'll step in.
Yeah, and here's some. I cut this in half for you guys if you want to share. I'm
I
sorry.
want
you-
like a savory. Like what's a say? I'm not starting sweet. I want like a.
oh, okay.
You want this.
You want a piece of this, and this is really good. And local, you know, we love to support local. And you guys know when we go on the
I've
road,
been just ladling a little chimichurri onto
I was
it.
about to
when
say,
we go on the road, we like to find really unique places to eat.
I am
So-
the same way.
So when we go to Kentucky this weekend, there's a place called Cliffside Diner.
Okay.
It's built into a
That's
cliff, and our guys are going to fill the entire restaurant, and we throw nutritional value out the window.
As you should.
Yeah,
Eating's about eating. It ain't about nutrition.
absolutely.
so good. I'm so sorry. I'm getting your way.
No, get in there. Get in
Dude,
there.
get you another bite too. I mean,
That's great. That's great.
that's the
This is-
sausage. This is the apple and pecan.
okay,
All I
this
can
is-
think of is Ismo. That's all I'm seeing here. If you've never seen Ismo on YouTube, you people need to
no.
watch it. But that's what I get when I'm looking at Nolan right now.
But yeah, check out everything. EmpanaolaEmpanadas.com. As Coach mentioned, they have a
I'm
great
stealing these.
Yeah.
bunch of menu options. Just leave me.
I'm just kidding.
You can actually have the rest of the sausage and gravy. I'm a little not
mine.
that hungry today, but I am going to finish this apple one.
okay.
This
I'm
is
taking
this is almost better than a fried apple pie. In fact,
It-
I would
absolutely.
say it might
with the
actually
pecan?
be just because it's like the dough is very light and everything. But EmpanaolaEmpanadas.com. You can
Raul
call them.
Maliver.
Raul Maliver. You can call them 251-725-0269, and they have all kinds of great options on this menu.
Absolutely.
I want to try the beef Argentina now and the chorizo Mexicana. That actually may be what's for lunch today.
And what's exciting me more, guys, is the fact that there's going to be a donut place opening in the same little strip mall as them. I guarantee you, we're going to have donuts in here. Gus wanted to come to be our guest today because he knew what we were bringing. So sorry, Gus. Gus the Wonder Dog. He was at practice yesterday, but no empanola for you.
At least you can take your dog places. Mine acts up every
does
time I
he?
do.
Does he?
She only weighs like 110 pounds.
Okay. So that's more than twice old Gus.
And before we moved back to Mobile, my wife and I were living in an apartment. And I don't know if you've ever gotten the call of, the dog pulled me down. I've hit my head.
Oh my gosh.
At that point, you have to drop everything and rush home.
Absolutely.
And the dog doesn't mean anything by
No,
it. I mean,
no.
But, Coach,
What a great start to the show.
it really is. But we're going to have to pivot to some basketball
Okay.
now. You've
Let's
got
do
some
it.
highlights for us.
I do
We
have some
played.
highlights. It was senior day the other day, and I just got to give a big shout out to I call him Fleas because he has just been our manager for 3 years. He is such a great guy. He does all the little dirty work that people don't. He's just got a servant's heart. I just love this guy so much, and we're really going to miss him.
And also, I want to comment on this too. It's, everybody comes out and honors their managers and everything, and it's like, okay, cool. The managers are on the field with the coach.
Yeah.
It doesn't always seem like the coaches is bought into it as he is with the players.
Yeah.
But you seem just as excited for Fleas' senior day stuff as you did Walter, who we're seeing right here.
Absolutely. Here's Walter Peggs. He's number 2 in the country at, I think, 26 point something points per game. There's another one of those shots. I just sit there and shake my head. Walter, you ran that wrong. Oh, good shot, Walter. And that's a classic right there. We've got Big Webb. We're going to see a lot of Webb on some of the highlights too because he has really taken his game to another level.
I
Is
have
Walter
been
posting
so
up down
impressed with him too. I mean, the minutes he played in this game in particular.
Yeah.
Webb had only played 25 minutes in 2 games prior to this one, and he played 32 in this one. And to me, there's some prototypical big guy parts of Webb's game, specifically free throw shooting. That hasn't been his best part of his game. But when it's mattered here lately in these close games, he's been hitting
clutch.
them.
He's really worked. He's very coachable. Webb's very coachable and works on his game and the little stuff. We've worked on the hook shot, which when he's getting it, there he is down there. Boom. Hello. Come to Papa. There's an empanola for you. Look at this split. That's a great split. He got called on an offensive foul earlier on one, which I thought it was the exact same move. Great job. Little hook shot. I want him to lean in a little bit more on that. There's Luka getting pushed out of bounds, but Webb following up. Nice finish inside. And he can use either hand. He can go to the left, go to the right. Here he is here. Boom, left hand hook.
And I'll tell you what is impressive to me too. A lot of guys want to use those arms to create separation. Webb's doing it more with his shoulders than anything
Yes.
else, and that makes it a
Yes.
much harder call for that push off.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, granted, when
Is-
Webb
is
hits
this-
people, it looks like they're hit by a
that's-
truck.
That's like, oh my gosh. I mean, you see lights flashing when he goes up and throws down on you like that.
I
you
do
know.
have questions
Yes.
about the integrity of the backboards after Jaden Webley has spent so much time hanging on them, because that is a big dude.
That is a big dude. He's really worked hard to improve his fitness this year and getting up and down the floor. And boy, when he throws down, it's something special. I think he's got a good. If he will take his work ethic now to another level, I think he's got a chance to play overseas somewhere.
And I mean, he's got the build for it.
Yeah.
I really like the way he works up against the glass. And, you know, you don't always see it necessarily reflected in the rebounding numbers specifically.
Right.
But when he gets into the game and he comes out, he makes an impact and he does everything.
Yeah.
In fact, watching him against, I can't remember if it was Miles or Lane, there were several times there he was coming out to the perimeter to guard shooters.
His defense, his defensive footwork is exceptional. He's actually very, very light on his feet, and his defensive footwork is really, really good.
And Nolan and I actually talked about this a lot during the Lane game. If you look at the two bigs on this roster, you're expecting the power game from Webb and the finesse game from Tim, and it's just completely switched.
Yeah, it's really Tim likes to put his shoulder in and grind on guys. I wish he'd go to his right hand. You know, and speaking of the power game, you know, we played Miles the other day, and neither of our bigs shot a single free throw. Neither did Stephen Lyles, and those are guys who play out of a power game. So I guess we're going to have to work on being even more powerful with them.
And, you know, I'll say this. I think the team as a whole did a very good job of responding to the physicality of Miles. It was really impressive. Now, game didn't go your way, 79-63. This was a much closer game when we played Miles up at their place. In your opinion, what is the difference between the two?
I thought our first half was a solid first half. In the second half, you know, Miles is the number 2 defensive team in the country right now, and they've been in the top 5 for 5 of the last 6 years. In fact, you know, for most of the time, they were the number 1 defensive team in the country, and they just really get up and grind on you. We're not able to replicate that in practice with their athleticism. And so I think they really took us out of our rhythm in the second half. And then, you know, you're pounding the ball inside, and if you aren't able to get to the free throw line, it can end up getting a little bit frustrating. And so it was not a good second half for us.
Now, talking about something that was good for you, we did play too since the last time we spoke. We had Lane this past Saturday. And what really stood out to me was that Showtime first half, 71% from the floor, 60 points
60
total.
points. We were down 1 to the Celtics.
I
Celtics
mean,
were
it
up-
was great
scored
ball.
61 the first half in their game, and we scored 60. We were down 1 to the Celtics, so to speak. No, it was a really fun, and that's, you know, kind of been the schizophrenic nature of our team, is that we'll play sometimes absolutely beautiful basketball, and then in the second half we just haven't been as, I don't know whether we're not as locked in, but it just hasn't been as nice. If we can put two halves together, because you're right. I mean, that first half was just incredible. I think there were some school records set in that first half. Nolly, what do you think? 60 points in the first half?
I think so.
I think that was a record. And then, like you said, our percentage was tremendous. And, you know, we just got to get out and get running on people. Keep that going.
You mentioned, you know, that difference from the first half to the second half. It's kind of been a consistent thing. What pops out a lot of the time to me, in the first half especially, we have guys who will just take over the game.
Yeah.
Walter doesn't score 3 points and then 3 minutes later Walter scores again. Walter scores 9 points
he's
and
like
then
bunches.
9 points again.
He's like grapes. He's like bunches.
He really is.
He's like bunches of grapes.
And, you know, Stephen even did that in early on in the game against Miles. There was one point we went on a 6-point run, and all of them were Stephen Lyles baskets. When you're in that mode where the offense drives best when people are getting hot, when individuals are able to take over, how do you then get them to translate that to the second half.
Yeah, and we give the guys a lot of freedom in the offense. You know, once they get
Yeah.
flowing, to let stuff really happen with them, and then sometimes it's like that Zen moment where they're just in the moment, and we sit there and go, they're not in that same mode in that second half, but they sometimes take the same shots.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part because it's like Walter, he'll take some shots and I'm going, no, oh, Walter, good shot. And it's the same with Steve. He'll pull up on a 3 and I'm going, Steven, and it goes in and you go, great. And maybe he misses the next one. Well, we're still 50%.
Right.
So it's just, reminding the guys, listen, in the second half, without slowing the game down, let's try to get to the free throw line and control the pace a little bit better that way. If we get running, let's run. But otherwise, let's go for real high percentage shots.
Now, and I want to ask this too. For those of you who are wondering at home, anytime I ask Coach a question that's strategically minded, it is not a suggestion. Coach does a great job. I have no
appreciate
notes. But what stood out to me, especially the past couple of games, we've really seen more of an emergence of Rocco Lamuno.
Yes.
I mean, Rocco's played pretty good ball all year,
Yes.
but he has gone from playing, okay, yeah, you're a freshman who can play at this level, to you are a good basketball
He
player
is.
at this
He
level.
is.
And Sprout has done the same.
Absolutely.
Has that kind of played in your mind of like, okay, maybe now that these guys are coming into their own more as players, we can sit Steven and Walter in the first half and see if that makes the legs a little fresher.
Yeah,
in
and
the
that's
second?
that's what we've tried to do, is to give those guys rest and not make any excuses. We've had a bunch of guys sick in the last 2 weeks. Myself included, suffering from multiple ugliosis as I do, and just trying to get everybody back healthy. Bo, we were going to have Bo in here today, but he's still not back 100%. And in fact, last when we had Steven here, and I was sitting there looking at him beside me, and I thought, boy, you don't look very well. And then later that night, I got sick. So trying to get everybody healthy. Everybody's going through this. All the teams are going through this. You just hope that we get over it by the time the conference comes. But we have been trying to rest guys, letting Rocco play, because I think Rocco's a tremendous player. I think he can become another Walter Peggs in many ways. And then Sprout has really, really stepped up as well. So trying to give guys rest, make sure that we have them for the second half.
And I'll say this too, to the credit of the guys who are playing a little bit sick right now, or who have been playing outright sick. I had the flu 3 weeks ago. I went for a run this weekend, did half of what I normally do because I had to cough up a lung
Right.
the whole way. When you've got all that chest congestion, when you feel bad, your body aches that little bit extra, and you add that onto a road schedule and a practice schedule, all of this, it makes it so much harder just to keep the one thing,
Plus
thing.
classes. They're in classes and they got to go and study. Like the Tuskegee game, Steven hadn't eaten in 2 days. I hadn't eaten in 2 days. Webb was throwing up before in shooting practice that day.
Webb did not look like he felt well headed into that
No,
game.
no, he didn't, So it's just a matter, just praying the good Lord give us some mercy and we all get healthy as we go into this final stretch of the season.
We've got the final stretch of the season coming up on the show. We'll talk about it when we come back. You're watching the Craig Kennedy Show on the SHC Athletics YouTube channel.
This is the way down a path that leads to a place upon the hill, led by thought leaders, activists, and Jesuit princes. Among the hill is where tradition and a strong desire to do and achieve reside. Ingrained in rich tradition, filled with purpose, fueled by passion. Brink Hill College is for those who seek more.
Welcome back to the Craig Kennedy Show here on the Spring Hill College Athletics YouTube channel. Coach, it's been a long year. It's been a lot of fun.
It has been a lot of fun, and it's more to come.
There is definitely still more to come, but I'll say this, a couple of games hadn't gone our way here and there.
Yeah.
And I started a new book. My wife got me Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's John Wooden and Me.
Yes.
And I open it up. He opens with, Coach has been dead for 7 years now,
Yes.
and it really hit me how much our relationship meant
Right.
when I received the Presidential Medal of Freedom like he did.
Right.
And then he goes on to talk a little bit about the importance Coach played in his life, but he has this quote, And as Kareem put it, Coach Wooden's most important lesson was that we should never focus on the outcome, but on the activity. Don't fo- don't think about winning the game. Just do everything possible to prepare. As long as you have done everything possible and you have given your best self on the court, that is your reward. The scoreboard is meaningless.
Yeah.
And that really struck me as poignant. And I mean, there's you and Coach right there.
Yeah, I was very, very fortunate to meet Coach Wooden. I think this was 2002, and he had been speaking at Don Meyer's basketball clinic up in northern state in South Dakota. And it's really funny because, I've always grown up a Wooden fan. We were very fortunate.
Who watched basketball in the 60s, 70s?
Yeah, UCLA teams. When I was an assistant at the University of Winnipeg, we tied his record of 88 consecutive wins, not his consecutive championships, but his consecutive win record.
I don't think anybody can blame you for not winning 7 consecutive championships.
I mean, it's unbelievable. But I got a chance to meet Coach, and I had a book, and I wanted to get him to sign it. And Coach Meyer came to me. I got to know Coach Meyer quite well, and he said, Craig, he said, Coach is getting tired. He's not going to autograph any more books. And so I was fortunate to meet. So afterwards, I wrote Coach Wooden and told him, that I've been such a fan of his, and he just affected me so much about how he treated people. And said that I had this book of his, and he said, well, send it to me and I'll autograph it for you. So I sent him the book, and he autographed that. He sent me the Pyramid of Success, autographed that. And I got a Christmas card from him for the next 3 years until he passed away. But what's really ironic, why I actually had reference to this photo, is I talked to a friend of mine in Winnipeg, a guy named Joe DiCurzio, who was probably the best coach I've ever seen. And he was from Italy originally. He was on a soccer team that was undefeated and unscored on, and he was the goalie. Anyways, he goes on to win 3 provincial championships, which is the same as like 3 state championships.
Right.
And he was telling that he had been in a clinic in Minneapolis. He comes down in the morning, and there's Coach Wooden. So he walks over to introduce himself and shake his hand. And Coach Wooden says, well, come and sit with my wife and I and have breakfast together. So they're sitting there, and he said at one point, Coach Wooden says, now, Joe, I can tell you want to ask me a lot of basketball questions, but I'm going to give you one piece of advice. He said, we deal with X's and O's on paper, but in reality, we deal with people. And the most important thing as a coach is how you treat them as people. Because if you don't understand them and care for them as people, nothing else matters. The wins and losses don't. And, and I've always been such an aficionado of Coach Wooden, because at the end of the year, there's only one team that wins a championship. And this is something Coach DiCurzio and I talked about. The hardest thing in the world is to win the last game of the year. That's really, really hard. So does it mean that everybody else is a failure, everybody else is a loser? No. It's, what are we doing in between the beginning of the year and the end of the year? How are we impacting these kids' lives? How are we teaching them? And the one thing, we had a meeting last night after shooting practice, and I said to the guys, the Bible says the truth will set you free. And I will be honest with you guys. And sometimes it's going to hurt your feelings. But I have to be honest with you because I care about you. And I'm not going to lie to you. And so we had some heart-to-heart conversations about some stuff. But that's something I learned from Coach Wooden, is that it's so important how you treat these people.
And, I've just finished the section of the book. I'll admit, I got it for Valentine's Day. I got it last night. Couldn't sleep,
Right.
Stayed up, read the first
What a great
50
gift.
pages. It really was.
What a great gift.
My wife is very good about buying me things that I'll directly send to her.
Right.
If I'm one of those people,
A
if
man
I don't
after my own heart.
if I don't specifically tell you I want it, I probably don't actually want it. Like,
Nolan, am I supposed to whisper on that one? A man after my own heart.
I'll tell you what, if nothing else, that's going to make a great audio clip for you
There
at
you
some
go.
point. But I just finished the section where Kareem is talking about his recruitment and how Coach comes from LA to New York.
Yes.
And Kareem was talking to him years later. And Coach said the first and strongest thing that made an impression on him was how nice their apartment was.
Right.
And Kareem kind of laughed and he said, you must be thinking about somebody else because that place was small. It was in a bad area, yada, yada,
Right.
yada. And Coach went, no, you went in there and it was clean, and the photos on the wall were straight, and they were
Right.
family photos.
Right.
You could tell the environment. And Kareem goes on to talk about there was a kid who was being recruited to UCLA
Right.
who happened to snap at his mama while he was sitting there with coach
Right.
about something. And that's how he lost his scholarship
Sure.
to UCLA. And I'll be honest with you, the reason I wanted to talk about this with you specifically is everything I've read about the attitude, the mentality, the focus on improvement, I've heard you say.
Wow.
And I've seen it reflected in these guys.
Right.
I mean, they've come over and done post game win, lose, draw. Not
Right.
that we've drawn, but you get my point.
Right. Yes. I would take a draw
and-
some of our games.
I don't think anybody would mind.
No.
But it stood out to me in the way, specifically two of the guys, Walter and Steven specifically, have spoken. And, you know, in the era of sports today, it's so easy to go, that's not my fault. I mean, if you look
Right.
at the way the NFL is, Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown,
Right.
these guys who are throwing fits on the field, they're laying into their fellow players. They're
Right.
saying negative things about their teammates.
Right.
Those guys come over and sit down with me, and they talk about leadership being the difference in some of these wins and losses. They talk
Right.
about attitude. They talk about positivity. And when they're doing it, they're not talking about you. They're talking about themselves. There's
Yes.
such a culture of accountability, and there's such a focus on being a better person, specifically within this program.
They are just, you know, and I'm really blessed. We try to recruit good people because that's, you know, as a coach and in any coach, you're coming in dealing with kids that have had 10, 15 years of influences from others. And that's hard to change in a way. So first off, we have to recruit really good people.
Right.
And, you know, this goes back. The program was like this when I got here. You know, Coach Aaron Niven, who is here, you know, he had guys like Chase Shellman. He had Grayson Rogers. He had Jared Holland. You know, these were really good guys that the program was. And so we wanted to build upon that. And, you know, I try to coach by the golden rule. I'm going to treat these guys like I wanted my children to be coached. And, you know, I'm not hesitate to snap on them sometimes, just like I would with my own kids. And there has to be consequences. So like one of the things we do yesterday, the guys have to evaluate the stat sheet.
Mm-hmm.
What did they do well? What did they do that was okay? And what did they do poorly? Because I said, when you leave here and you go into a job, you are going to have a performance evaluation. And that determines whether you get a bonus, you know, whether you get a pay raise or you get demoted or possibly fired. So we really try to use athletics to prepare them the skills when they leave here. Are they good communicators? Are they good team players? Are they self-initiative in their work ethics? So we think that, you know, these are such positives for being involved in athletics. And our job as coaches, we had talked earlier off air, you know, about Burrill and Tana, who had gone on to Division I level. And our job as coaches is to help people get to the next level in life.
I'm glad you referenced Burrill, because I want to be clear, of games I've called across all levels, Burrill is one of my favorite names. He's
Yes.
he's on my all name team
Yeah.
list. Burrill Kabumba just
the
rolls
big
off
La
the
Bamba,
tongue.
the big La Bamba, that's him, baby.
And but no, I mean, everything you just described to you see in this team and in these players. Rocco Lamuno the other night after Tuskegee, Nolan and I finished packing up. We're standing around talking. Rocco's standing there shooting. Walter, one of the most amazing things that athletes get an opportunity to do is connect with children.
Right.
There was one game we'd gone to overtime and we had lost.
Yes.
And I don't know how you feel about it. To me, there's nothing worse than that overtime loss.
Absolutely.
And there were 3 kids out on the court playing a little pickup game.
Yeah.
They said something to Walter about shooting with them.
Right.
And in the 20 minutes, Nolan and I kind of stood off to the side talking and packing up. Walter stood there and played ball with those kids.
Right.
Walter just got done losing in overtime. He'd played like 40 minutes that game, had
Yes.
30-something points. He stopped to play the game with those
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
And you can't teach that to somebody at
No.
18, 19 years old.
Yeah.
You learn that at 2, 3, 4,
Sure.
5 years
Yeah.
old. You're the person you wanted somebody else to be.
Right. And there's, you know, we always talk about there's a point where the parents set the foundation, But then there's a point when the kids get away from home, and even in high school, middle school, they become their own person.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're seeing the groundwork of his parents, but then you're seeing the person who Walter is. Last year, remember, we had Dana Veth, who's a member of the Bahamian soccer team and worked here. His son had his birthday party here. And there was Webb lifting these kids up so they could dunk. And Webb was just giggling away as these kids were trying to dunk the ball as hard as they could, But that's just the kind of guys we have. And it's just, I feel so blessed to be around them. And we're just so thankful for our fans here, particularly Brett Heim, our librarian, who was at our game the other day, Father Steele, our cheering section, our student section. We're just so fortunate. And I wish more people realize, particularly the professors, and this happens at every institution, because they don't see what the guys go through on a daily basis, the grind. But just what really, really good ambassadors we have for the school with our basketball teams and all our teams here.
And I'll say this too. I mean, let's be honest. We don't really have an NBA caliber player on the team.
Right.
We have plenty of guys who may play overseas ball. Honestly, if I one day turn on a G League game and Walter's playing, I'm not going to be surprised.
Right.
And there's so many guys who their focus is on the next phase of life, and they're doing it in a real and tangible way. When we had Steven on, he talked about wanting to start his own nonprofit, wanting to run his own business. And the way he spoke about it wasn't, oh, yeah, I'm going to have a business. I'm not going to have to do anything. Somebody's going to do it for me. No, Steven is, here's how I want to work and grind.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it goes back to like Ethan Sisk, who played on our JV team the last couple of years, and now he's doing track and field. He's the same kind of guy. He went and started this program where they're taking the leftover food from the cafeteria, and it's going to the needy. Those are the kind of people we have at Spring Hill. And
you almost have better food in the cafeteria than I had
listen,
at my school.
our CAF here, I think our food is absolutely outstanding. And they do such a great job, and they're such loving and caring people. But we're just so blessed to get to work with people like that here at Spring Hill.
Now, Coach, before we move on and talk about what's on tap for this weekend, I do want to ask, we saw that picture of you with Coach.
Yes.
Have you ever met somebody that you kind of, for lack of a better term, fangirled about, like, oh my God, that's them?
Fan what?
Fangirl is the term, right, Nolan?
I think so.
Nolan, that's a term of which I am not familiar.
Basically, it's when you meet somebody and they're such a big deal to you, you can't talk, you don't know what to do, you're just like, ah!
I've been very fortunate in my life. I've met some people who had great success, and very fortunate to grow up on a thoroughbred breeding farm and racing farm. So we were involved with people. When you're at the racetrack, you're involved with the richest or the poorest, and we had a chance to meet a lot of people. So I've never. I guess the closest we came, I was running around the corner and I ran into the great hockey player Bobby Hull. And
did you ask him if he could jump up in the air and knock in a slap shot for you?
No, he thought I was at a loss for words. It's the fact I ran into him and my solar plexus got smacked and I couldn't speak for a second. And he went, "Oh, I guess you want my autograph." That was probably as gobsmacked as I've ever been. But to meet someone like Coach Wooden was just such an absolute honor and privilege.
I've got two of them, and both of them have been over the phone.
Right.
I was working as a producer at a sports station here in town. My very first day, somehow our big guest was Brad Stevens.
Okay.
And it was right as he transitioned from head coach to GM.
Gotcha.
And the third person I have to call on a phone I'm still learning how to use and how to make work with the radio equipment around me. I'm like, And then the second one was Eli Gold, because I grew up listening to Eli.
Gotcha.
I've always been such a huge fan.
Just moved back to Alabama, apparently.
He did, I think.
Yeah.
And he was the nicest man on earth.
Right.
Just as down to earth as you could be.
Yeah.
I will say, as any man of his age, he was terrible with technology.
Sure.
But just one of the nicest people I've ever gotten to speak to. And I still distinctly remember Mom and I were out patching fence, and my dad had an old 93 Chevy Silverado Z71.
Right.
And we're sitting there patching the fence. The doors are open. Alabama's playing Tennessee, and it was the year of the Rocky Block when
Okay.
Terrence Cody blocked the kick so Alabama could beat
Right.
Tennessee. I remember we stop what we're doing. We're standing right there at the door and hearing him call that. So getting to speak
Right.
to him was just like,
what
wow.
what an honor. Oh,
It-
there's no doubt.
It really
There's no doubt.
was.
One of the things I learned, and you learn from somebody like Coach Wood, and you learn, from Coach Meyer, Coach Champy, who I worked for at Auburn, who was just such a gentleman. And I was at a recruiting event a couple of years ago, and there was a coach there I hadn't met. He was a Division I coach, and I went over to shake his hand, and, told him who I was, and he was looking past me like this to see who he was going to talk to next. And the crazy thing is the day before, I had spent 15 minutes on the phone with a guy who I'm not going to mention, but is probably one of the wealthiest people in the United States.
Then we should
And-
probably leave his name out of it
and-
so we don't
Yeah.
have to learn the word litigious
Yeah,
today.
and actually has a vehicle named after their farm.
Okay.
But this man spends 15 minutes on the phone with me, and here was this coach who is kind of big time me because I'm just a Division II guy looking past him, and it's just so important because the Division II guy can become a Division I guy pretty fast, and the Division I guy like me can be at Division II pretty fast.
Right.
And it's just treating everybody with respect, and you learn so much from the example set by Coach Wood and Coach Meyer, people like that.
And I mean, that's what stood out to me as you told that story. Now, Coach, Central State
Yes.
up next.
Yes.
It's a long trip to
It's
Ohio.
a long trip to Ohio. We're going to get boogieing at 2:30 in the morning so the guys can sleep all the way through.
How exactly do you get people that big to sleep on a bus seat? Because I'm only 6 feet and I do not.
we often take air mattresses and put them in the aisles so the guys can sleep in the aisles.
At least they're not laying in the floor. No,
Correct.
like with teams I've worked with, you'll get on the bus, you'll be going somewhere, and all of a sudden everybody's going to be laying on that floor.
Absolutely.
And like I'm lucky if I can keep my shoes on. It's
Right.
sticking so bad.
Absolutely. We're fortunate, Gulf Coast Tours, who totes us everywhere we go. They do a great job. Their buses are clean and they're immaculate. We've got great drivers, so we really appreciate them so much for safely transporting, because that is a long haul up to Ohio.
It really, really is.
And it's Xenia, Ohio. The school's in Wilberforce, right next to the Buffalo Soldiers Museum.
okay.
And we've had a couple pictures taken there. They've been redoing the museum, so hopefully we're going to get a chance to go into the museum this year.
That'll be
when we're
awesome.
up there.
Now, we've played Central State already this year, dropped it here at home, 84-79. What stood out to you about that game, and what's the correction plan for game 2?
Yeah, the correction plan for game 2, we've really been working on our defense even more since then, and just challenge our guys to be better defenders, especially, down the stretch. And so I think you're going to see, an improved defense from us and just keep scoring the way we are.
And I mean, the scoring, we talked about it in the last segment, especially in the Lane game was coming. Now, Kentucky State on the other side of that, Kentucky State, a team you hung 100 on. It's tough to beat a team twice. It really is.
It really, especially in their gym. They'll have their football pep band on the end playing, and it's a great environment. Dr. Jackson, Jamal Jackson, their coach. Congratulations on getting your PhD, coach. That's a great accomplishment, and they're tough to beat up there. They are the thoroughbreds. They're going to get out and run, and they're athletic.
Now, how much tougher is playing a team like that on the road than at home?
Yeah, it is very tough because they've got their fans there. Like I say, they've got their football band in there playing. It's loud, it's noisy. Our guys trying to hear us in timeouts becomes a little bit more difficult. So it's a real challenge of communication.
All right. Well, that'll wrap up what we've got in Coach. Before we finish up, played our last home game this year. We've had a lot of great crowds out at the Outlaw this season.
Really has. And we're just so thankful for our students and our faculty and staff who come out to our games. We really appreciate your support. Listen, we got baseball and softball coming up. They're going to need our support as well. And it's time to purple up and give a big hill yeah to Badger Nation. Appreciate y'all.
Badger Nation, purple up, hill yeah. We'll talk to you later. You're watching The Craig Kennedy Show here on the SHC Athletics YouTube channel.